King of the Hill.
So the guys over at Project Contingency have posted another small Q&A. This one's about 6 minutes in length. The first minute or so is devoted to their social media outreach and how they've gained subscribers and they've gained more of a following since their April update. And just talking about how their community in general has grown a little bit. Then they answer a few questions that a lot of people have been asking, such as controller support, in which they say that Project Contingency will support just about any controller that can be connected to a PC, and given that this is Unreal Engine 4, I assume that means any X input device, at least on Windows. This does mean you'll be able to play Project Contingency with a PlayStation controller, or a Nintendo Switch controller, and they've also shown off that the UI will update to reflect that. The image they used was of the buttons from the PlayStation controller. They also talked about controller hot swapping, and being able to use multiple input modes, which is something that Unreal Engine supports, but is a nice thing to keep included nonetheless. Now they also showed off in-engine split screen. Now for those of you who know Unreal Engine, UE4 does support in-engine split screen, which is a feature I feel it has up over its competition currently. I'm not aware of any other Halo fan game that utilises split screen in the same way that Project Contingency does. The game also allows the assigning of input devices to specific characters, so for example if you don't want to use the keyboard and mouse for any player at all in the split screen setup, you're welcome to plug in multiple controllers and use those for each character, and you can assign those in the options menu. There was also a question about maps and whether they'd be recreating any other classic Halo maps, and they said it's pretty unlikely. While they do have Cardinal, which is their Guardian remake, they are looking to expand and create their own maps. While I do wish some maps like the Pit and potentially Lockout come back, as those were two very, very iconic maps, heck even Blood Gulch as well. As much as I'm not a fan of Blood Gulch, it is such a staple of the franchise that I feel it should be there in at least some way, shape or form. I'm really excited to see what maps they come up with. Their new map, Monolith I believe it was called, looks pretty interesting. Looks like a pretty close quarters indoor map that seems good for Capture the Flag and King of the Hill and Team Slayer. But I am excited to see what sort of open, organic maps they come up with, especially with a focus for objective play. Because I personally do prefer objective play over Slayer. I feel it gives something to do rather than just run around killing people. And it's nice to see that they want to go in the way of creating a unique experience rather than copying or emulating what Halo has done in the past. The next topic that's brought up is customization. We've seen a little bit of the Spartan customization in their trailers, but we haven't seen anything as far as weapons or vehicles goes. And this Q&A addresses that by saying that they haven't got any plans for weapon or vehicle skins. While I'd like to see weapon skins, potentially, I don't think vehicle skins would be that great, as they do sort of break the immersion a little bit. Weapon paints and weapon finishes, if kept to the theme of the game and the lore, can be a really nice addition to give a bit of flair to a game, but I don't think painting a Warthog bright pink with Hello Kitty on it or something like that would really fit within a game like this. Maybe that's just me, maybe you guys want to see crazy customization options, I don't know. But I personally would like something that's a little more based in reality as far as the Halo universe goes. I'm not saying that Halo 5's pizza and french fry skins were a terribly bad thing, but they didn't make a lot of sense. They seemed added as a little bit of fan service and a little bit of, oh, we're having a bit of fun as a studio to try and take us away from the game itself. But I do think that customization, especially Spartan customization, has to be there in a decent form, because that is a staple of the Halo franchise. Weapon skins and vehicle skins I can understand, they're not really a staple of the franchise. But customizing your Spartan, or Elite, I don't know if Contingency has playable Elites yet, is of the utmost importance. And we've seen some of that with the emblems on armor and that sort of thing. After this, they talk briefly about mod support, and that it won't be happening. Sorry to break it to you guys, but the creation of user-generated content for a game of which the IP isn't owned is a very, very sore spot. I mean, creating fan games in general is a very sore spot, but this sort of thing allows you to rip game assets from Halo 2 or Halo 5 or Halo 2 Anniversary, as a lot of people do. I've seen a few Halo 2 Anniversary models floating around being put into Source and Custom Edition and that sort of thing. And if those were to make their way into Project Contingency or IO1 or any other fan game, then that is in direct breach of the Microsoft Game Content Usage Rules, which state that you're not allowed to reverse engineer the games in order to create your content. While this is a shame, I can see why it's being done and it makes a whole lot of sense. And given the nature of the engine and Unreal Engine 4, while it can host mods and support mods for games like Ark and things, they had to do a lot of work with Epic Games themselves to actually get that sort of feature implemented in. You have to use a special branch of the Unreal editor, and that gives you access to the full game's source code and all the blueprints and everything else. And I don't think that's something that the guys over at Project Contingency are going to want to do, because it literally means that somebody could take the Project Contingency gameplay, they could take the source code, the assets, and create a completely new game based off that. And while that could be really cool, something like SPV3 and Halo CE, they created something completely new, using the assets that they were given and the things they had available to them. It would require a lot of work on behalf of the team to be able to do such a thing. A lot of engine modification, a lot of outside work that would need to be done to create features like this. Now don't get me wrong, I'm sure they'll probably add Forge or something like that. That is speculation, but it makes sense as, again, it's a staple of the franchise. But as for hard mod support, I don't expect to see that anytime in the future. Now, the final question was about the announcer. I and many other people had issues with the way the announcer sounded. It sounded like somebody trying to emulate Jeff Steitzer as best they could, and, at least in my opinion, not doing the best job at it. It's not to say it wasn't a good attempt. I don't think that person's voice lent itself to emulating Jeff. Now, they did confirm that the voice samples were placeholder, and that was to be expected. And they also asked if anybody has any feedback or any ideas as to what they could do to improve them. Now, I personally think that not emulating Jeff Steitzer, although he is a staple of the franchise, it's pretty difficult to get something close enough to his voice to sound believable. I feel they should take the announcer in their own direction and create what they feel sounds best for the game. The announcer is one of the things that doesn't directly affect the gameplay or the feel of the game. Sure, when you hear Jeff Steitzer's voice, you know it's Halo. So if you can create an announcer that fits with the way you've built the game, fits with the gameplay, fits with the narrative, that sort of thing, then roll with that. It'll be much easier to come up with than having to emulate somebody else, and you'll have a lot more fun, and it will just fit better with the game doing it that way. So that's a quick roundup on my first opinions on the new Q&A video put out by the Project Contingency guys. Do you have any differing opinions? Do you agree with me? Let me know in the comment section down below. And remember, stay classy.